Lady 6, new track there called Dark Brown. 14 past 8.
You're listening to the Radio Wammo Breakfast, only on Kiwi.
Sky Leader of the Greens, Russell Norman, with us this morning. Good morning, Russell.
Top of the morning to you, Wammo.
Now, the Prime Minister has been busy in Asia, specifically Malaysia, organising free trade deals. He reckons it's a big opportunity for exporters for New Zealand. It's almost like the gateway to Asia. We'll be able to make our squillions from exporting goods to that part of the world. What are your thoughts?
Well, these trade deals always inevitably involve trade-offs against sovereignty and control. So there's big parts of the deal which I think most New Zealanders would be pretty surprised about.
What parts of the deal would we be surprised about, Russell?
Well, you'd be surprised, for example, that part of the deal is pursuing increased liberalisation for the regulation of the financial sector. You might think that after the global financial meltdown, people everywhere are saying we need better regulation of the banking and financial sector. In fact, the deal pursues further deregulation of the financial sector. You might also be surprised that a part of it is an investment clause. And investment clauses in these treaties, what they mean is that if a Malaysian company has invested in New Zealand, if the New Zealand government passes a law that devalues, that results in that company being of less value, then that company can sue the New Zealand government in an international court. And there's been many successful cases now where companies have sued governments when they've passed laws that have cost them money. It's called expropriation or indirect expropriation. So that's a part of all of these deals now. There used to be a thing, some people might remember the Multilateral Agreement on Investment, the MAI, which was shot down years ago. Well, these bilateral treaties all have investment clauses in them, and they're slowly putting together the MAI again, the Multilateral Agreement on Investment. They're just doing it piece by piece.
Okay. But surely these are sideshows compared to the benefits and the dollars that will come into New Zealand.
Well, it's pretty big money. Argentina just lost an investment battle. It cost them $165 million US. They had an American water company was invested in Argentina, and the American water company got the contract to run the water system, but buggered it up so that the water became full of algae. So the Argentinian government said that they wouldn't be paid for 12 months while they fixed up the problem. So this American water company said, well, you have expropriated us indirectly because you've decreased the value of our investment. We're going to sue you. And so they took them to the International Court for Trade and Conflict, or whatever it's called, and the Argentines lost, and the three-person panel awarded costs of $165 million against the Argentinian government. And there's lots of other examples. There's heaps of them.
Russell, are you anti-trade? I mean, how can we get more money into the country? How can we get more money into the pockets of exporters?
Well, the key problem that exporters face at the moment isn't access to markets. It's an extremely variable New Zealand dollar and a very high New Zealand dollar. The government has no strategy for dealing with the high New Zealand dollar. We've not only increased against the US dollar, which is what the Reserve Bank governor's been saying when I had him up about it at Finance and Expenditure Committee the other day. He says, well, it's just a US dollar story, but it's not. It's actually against our major trading partners. And what it means is that it's very difficult for not only exporters, but also if there's New Zealand businesses competing with imports. So anyone in the tradable sector is struggling because of the high New Zealand dollar, and the government has no strategy.
But it means I can get cheap sunglasses from America, Russell.
That's right. You can get cheap sunglasses, and I'm
like
sure you
that.
look mighty fine in them too.
Oh, I will. I will. Trust me.
But we do have a major trade problem and a current account deficit problem. Because obviously much of our economy is now overseas owned, so all the profits flood overseas every time the economy goes well.
But it makes sense, though, that we need to work more closely with Asia to share our goods and services. Does it not?
It makes sense to have good trading relationships with lots of different countries, so long as in the process you don't lose control of things that matter to you. For example, during the 97 crash, the Asian financial meltdown in 97, The Malaysian government put in place a series of capital controls. Mahathir put them in, and what it meant was that they came out of the Asian crisis much better than any other country in Southeast Asia, because they were able to put in controls over the flow of capital during the crisis. Losing the right to be able to control your economy is a very significant loss. And, we've already seen that it's had very significant consequences for New Zealand. We're struggling to pay our way in the world. We're racking up debt like there's no business, even before the recession. The private debt's been increasing dramatically.
On to something else now. The government's tax think tank. You've made a statement yesterday saying the government-sponsored group that has been set up to look at tax reform is compromised. What do you mean by this?
Well, the problem they've got is that one of the members of the group was one of the key advisors for Westpac in a case that Westpac lost in the High Court in Auckland. And Westpac was basically avoiding hundreds of millions of dollars in tax and was convicted of tax avoidance of more than $500 million New Zealand dollars, and with interest payments now owes the New Zealand taxpayer about $960 million. And so it seems to me that being convicted of tax avoidance of a scale of approaching $1 billion is a pretty serious matter. And one of the key advisors is on the government's tax working group. In fact, this advisor gave advice to Westpac about that it should reduce its corporate tax rate down to 6.5% using these tax avoidance measures. The proper corporate tax rate, of course, is 30%. And so he was providing advice to Westpac about it. Now, I don't think that this is the right person to be having on a government tax working group. He's also the person, of course, who's proposing to increase GST on ordinary people, the rest of us up to 15%. He's talked about it. While at the same time providing advice to Westpac as to reduce their corporate rate to 6.5%, using these financial instruments to reduce the amount of tax they pay. I just don't think it's right.
Finally, Russell, plastic bags. The decision has been made by Foodstuffs in the South Island to take off the levy at New World supermarkets. So now there are no levies on plastic bags, I think, at any of the main supermarkets anywhere in the country. Where to from here with the plastic bag problem in New Zealand?
It's I find it extraordinary that we are still talking about plastic bags in 2009. Well, most countries around the planet are dealing with them, or at least OECD countries. It's pretty simple. What happens in kind of places which care about plastic bags is they just put on a small levy right across the board. The government puts on a small levy, 5 to 10 cents, and it reduces the plastic bag consumption dramatically. Because you just get to the checkout and you go, oh yeah, you think about it because you've got to pay a very small amount of money. It makes you think about it. So the government has the power because the Green Party put through a bill called the Waste Minimisation Act, which gives the Minister for the Environment the power to impose such a levy. Yep. But of course, he hasn't. So, yeah, I mean, I think that it blows the environmental credentials out of the government out of the water that they can't even deal with something this basic.
It's a fairly simple thing, isn't it?
It's incredibly simple to do, and because you don't do it, you do it at the level of the wholesaler, that's where you collect it, and then the retailer just passes it on. It's incredibly simple, incredibly effective. You don't even have to ban plastic bags, which is what they've done in a lot of places. Just a small levy makes a huge difference.
So the issue here is you've got a generation or two generations who've grown up with plastic bags and know nothing else. They weren't aware that back in the 70s, 60s, there were no such things. Or certainly they weren't at the supermarket to the degree that they are today. Yeah.
It's a very simple environmental problem to deal with, and it just takes a very small amount of environmental concern on the part of the Minister for the Environment, and it would be fixed, just like that.
Would you agree that if you don't want to pay for a plastic bag, you're a donkey?
Well, Wammo, you know me, I'm a very polite person, and I wouldn't call people donkeys. That would be bad.
Sure. I'm going to play a track from Bachelorette called Donkey. Thanks very much, Russell Norman. Catch you next time.
Thanks, mate. Okay.
Russell Norman, co-leader of the Greens. Yes, and here is that track. from Bachelorette. Yes, if you don't like paying for a plastic bag, you probably are a donkey. Here on Kiwi.